excited to talk about some dynasty trades to make right now. So we do have some scenarios. We didn't just randomly put together some trades. It's not how we are. So let's start with Nate in the first trade scenario. So what is the trade scenario that you selected?
Yeah, so I went with the tier up trade target. So I'm a player we want to tier up from, go ahead and move on from, get a new, better player. How can we make that happen? How can we combine assets to improve a position? And looking at your wide receiver position, we're always looking forward with the wide receiver position because we know that they last a long time. They have a lot of production ahead of them. You can have a good wide receiver, can have, 8 years of production, maybe a decade for like the better ones. So how can we always stay on the right side of that curve? It's by selling the older wide receivers right around that production dip and just going and getting younger. I'm talking about tearing up from Devontae Adams to T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is a good target right now. A lot of people are kind of cooling off on T. Higgins, and he's kind of dropping in a lot of people's perceptions. A good guy to go over and acquire right now. Devontae Adams, you might need to add a second-round pick to him. Maybe even a 25-second you could get away with to get to T. Higgins because Devontae Adams is going to have a lot of production this season, we expect. He's always had great production. He is on a, not on a new team, but he has a new quarterback, Jimmy G. And as Mike talked about in the last podcast, if Jimmy G gets hurt, which he's only ever played one full season, so he has a history of getting hurt, the backup options are not good. And as good as Devontae Adams is, he's not going to be fantasy productive with those backup options right now. Best case scenario, you get a good season out of Devontae Adams, but I think this is one of those cases of selling a year early rather than a year late. We're going to get 6 years younger with getting T. Higgins, who's only 24 years old. Devontae Adams turns 31 this season. Let's move off of him, get younger. Only costs, maybe a 25-second to do this deal. We might lose a little bit of production this year, but we're setting up our team for success moving forward, churning over that wide receiver position.
So, Nate, I will tell you that I love this trade-up scenario. I absolutely love it. You're getting off an aging veteran who, maybe he's like how DeAndre Hopkins was for a while, where no matter the quarterback, he's still productive enough. But if Jimmy Garoppolo goes down, productive enough is not going to be what you're paying to acquire a guy like Devontae Adams. So give me T. Higgins. Give me that 24-second. Chev, tell me what you think here.
Jimmy G has always proven to find a way to get injured. Devontae Adams does not seem happy at all either. I mean, we've seen him be a little animated about how the team is moving forward and whatnot. So that is a little worrisome. I still think he's going to be an elite player this upcoming year with Jimmy G. I still think he can produce that, but I like T. Higgins in this trade as well. I think you get a younger guy with a better quarterback, and he's probably going to get signed with them a little bit longer as well. So being along with Joe Burrow, it's not a bad thing. Plus, you don't have the same coverage as what Devontae Adams is going to get week in and week out because you have Jamar Chase. Yep. So I think it opens up opportunities for Higgins.
Chev, let's actually move to you. And what is your trade scenario?
Yeah, and the trade scenario I chose with that I want to make right meow is a competitive trade target. And the guy I chose was Deontay Johnson, who is wide receiver 29 in DLF at this point. I like Deontay Johnson. I mean, he's a guy that sees so much targets that, the production was a little bit down, didn't see 100 receptions, but he didn't see any touchdowns either. And if you give him a few touchdowns, he's way higher up the list from where he finished. He probably would have finished around wide receiver 18, wide receiver 16, somewhere around there this last upcoming year. And we know the production that he can bring. He's a guy that is heavily targeted. He's a guy that you should be looking to get. He's not one of those jump ball guys. He's a guy that is going to be consistently targeted week in and week out. One of the trades that I came up with was Deontay Johnson for Kadarius Toney, a second and a third. Kadarius Toney is a proven guy that he's not proven, I guess. He really hasn't done much.
It's a proven disappointment.
Yeah, he's proven that he's going to be injured. You give up a second and third. If you're competing, those are going to be late. Not too worried about those picks. But you get a wide receiver that, his value has dipped. He's behind even George Pickens at this point in value. So, which is crazy to me to think because I don't know. I just see Deontay Johnson being a little bit more consistent and an easier target for Pickett to hit up in that offense. I just don't trust Kadarius Toney. I'd rather get the proven commodity in Deontay Johnson. And I even came up with T. Higgins for Deontay Johnson and Dalton Kincaid. Yes, you're losing T. Higgins, but you're getting another guy that gets 140 targets. Then you get a tight end that could be a top 5 target or a top 5 tight end in the league. So I think that helps you a little bit. Maybe you're losing to start off because T. Higgins' values are so good and you don't really know what you're getting with Dalton Kincaid to start off. But I think if you're putting yourself in a competitive team, you want to have more depth and more pieces that could become a tight end 1 and also a wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2.
Chev, I love this. I love both trades. And so Deontay Johnson has 552 targets on his career. So he's averaging 138 targets a year, which is really impressive.
Great.
And yeah, he's only had one 1,000-yard season, but another one with 923, another one with 882. And he doesn't miss a lot of games either, which is something else that's really good to think about. Why is George Pickens ahead of him? I actually think Deontay Johnson is the better football player. Give me Deontay Johnson. I love this, Chev. Nate, I'm sure you're probably going to agree with this one.
Yeah,
as well.
you all know where I am. I've been a huge fan of Deontay Johnson from back when we were arguing if it was going to be Deontay Johnson or James Washington. That was an argument back in the day.
Oh,
and
man.
I got roasted for saying it's obviously going to be Deontay Johnson. But here we are, still a value. People are undervaluing him. The volume is just speaks for itself. Play a game based on box scores. Got to chase volume.
Pickett could be better this year. I expect him to be better and more comfortable. So that's a plus for him as well.
So let's kick it over to me. The trade scenario that I picked was a tier down trade target for either running backs or wide receiver, and I went with a wide receiver. So I'm using DLF for everything ADP and their trade analyzer value. Just in case you're wondering, everything is based on a Superflex PPR format. So I am moving Stephon Diggs with his lofty value of 466.5 for Christian Kirk and a 24 first. That total is 492.7. So maybe you have to throw a fourth on there, or one of those quote unquote throw in players, like a depth piece, a James Washington, something like that. So I'm going to tell you why, and that is because I'm selling Diggs while I can. I think he's going to have a productive 2023 season. When you're moving a player and you're tearing down like this, even though you're still tearing down to a wide receiver 1 and getting first round draft capital on top of it, you want to sell a player that's going to be productive. You can't expect to give garbage and get gold. That's not how it works. So he was wide receiver 4 in 2022. Hey, Christian Kirk was wide receiver 12. Their ADP, though, is just worlds apart. So right now, Diggs on DLF, he's wide receiver 14 and wide receiver 15 on Keep Trade Cut, right? So there's some pretty good parity there. And Christian Kirk on DLF is wide receiver 38 and wide receiver 33 on Keep Trade Cut. That is bonkers. So the value here is buying the dip on Christian Kirk because everyone's still thinking Calvin Ridley is going to eat up his targets. I've talked about that ad nauseum. I don't think it's going to happen. The Jaguars have plenty of vacated targets. There's no problems at all. Calvin Ridley is going to be fine. Christian Kirk's going to be fine. Buy the volume dip. I'm fine with moving an almost 30-year-old wide receiver, getting a few years younger for a potential wide receiver 1, and picking up an additional first-round draft pick. Nate, Chev, agree, disagree? Talk to me.
I think it's decent value here. I think if I'm a competing team, Stephon Diggs, he has that week-to-week ability to win you a week when he goes off for 40 points. And unless I have a really, really strong wide receiver core around him, I think I'm probably keeping him because he's most likely my wide receiver 1 on my team for my lineup. So to move off of him personally, I would want a little bit more, but I do think this is fair value. I think it's a nice package to get, especially this 24 first. If it's a mid first, we're sure it's not going to be a late one. I do feel, pretty decent with the value here.
All right. So Chev, Nate said I have a nice package. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think the package is nice. I really appreciate how big it is and how good it is with the first you're getting back. I do. I like Christian Kirk. I think he's really undervalued this upcoming year. I think there's plenty of targets to go around there. I do love Stephon Diggs this upcoming year. I mean, when you're getting paired with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, I mean, those are guys that you want. But I think, Trevor Lawrence is going to show up this year as well. I mean, he played decent last year. I still think Diggs has potential, but I don't know. I feel fine with the package, but like Nate said, maybe you could get a little bit more for Stephon Diggs. But I'm fine with the package. I think it's decent or good value at this point, especially with him being 30 this upcoming year.
When I put this one together, I'm trying to, just looking at where these guys finished last year. I was also trying to project somebody that I thought had a chance to realistically finish close to where they were again last season. So that was part of it. Now we're going to kick it to Nate for his second trade scenario. Nate, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I picked a buy low, someone to target right now because their value is going up, and I want to pay for it now, get the value, and reap the reward. And that's Amari Cooper, another wide receiver who is just constantly undervalued for the production that he gives you year to year. Over the past 5 seasons, he has been a top 25 wide receiver in points per game every single season. And over his 8-year career, he's only not done that one time. He has been consistently a top wide receiver in fantasy football. Love his ability to just create points week in and week out. Did it last year with Jacoby Brissett. He did it with a Deshaun Watson who was very rusty and did not look very good. This year, sounds like they're going to have a much more open offense. They're going to be passing the ball a lot more. 11 personnel seems to be their base personnel this year. So they're going to have a lot of 3 wide sets, going to be passing heavy. Not going to be the same ground and pound Browns we've seen for the past couple of years. Amari Cooper is the clear wide receiver 1 there. I know Elijah Moore is there, and he came in the offseason, but I'm not worried about him. Donovan Peoples-Jones, like him a good bit, but Amari Cooper is the bona fide wide receiver 1 here for a quarterback that is really, really talented. And Amari Cooper, I expect him to once again, have a top 20 season with the potential to be a wide receiver 1 if Deshaun Watson, looks anything like he was the quarterback, years before. If that's the same quarterback that we're seeing for the Browns, there's a chance that Amari Cooper is a top 12 wide receiver. Getting him right now for a late 24 first, if you're a competing team, I think is a great deal to push you over the edge. And another trade I would make, if you want to go across position, this is where the true value lies. Cam Akers, James Cook, Zach Charbonnet, those guys who kind of have that value somewhere between a late first and early second. Those guys, if you have running back depth, you can move those for Amari Cooper. So someone who does need some running backs and may have some wide receiver depth. It's a nice trade to make there. It helps out both teams. And Amari Cooper, I think, is just such a good value for the production he's going to give you over the next 2-3 year window.
My only question is, when you're talking about buy low, I mean, a first round pick, I don't think a lot of people would equate with a buy low. Are you just saying that you think he's going to absolutely, just blow out that cost of a late first round pick? Like he'll be worth more than that. He'll out.
Yeah, I think, once we get into the season, people, if you're like, hey, I want Amari Cooper off your team, you're going to be asking for a lot more than a late 24 first. And a late 24 first is the ceiling of what I pay for Amari Cooper. I like those running backs I mentioned. You might be able to get him with an early second if someone really knows that your second round pick is going to be early. But I'd be willing to pay up to a 24 late first if that's, I'm a competing team and I need that to push me over the edge. I think just the value for production and the value for production over the next couple of years is so strong with Amari Cooper right now that, he's being really overlooked.
All right, then if that's the case, I'm on board with that. Chev, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like Amari Cooper for this upcoming year. I think Deshaun Watson is another guy that you could buy low for. I mean, he's a guy that has top 5 talent at QB when he is playing football. I mean, the guy hasn't played football in so stinking long. Not great, but I think he has a lot of talent. He has a lot left to prove as well. I think he has a good year this upcoming year, and he's somebody that, if you can buy him now, great, because I don't know if you're going to be able to after this upcoming season.
Chev, let's kick it right back to you then. Which trade scenario did you pick for your last one?
Yeah, the last one that I picked was sell high, trade target, running back or wide receiver. And the guy I went with is Travis Etienne. I just think there's a lot of other players out there that could have a bigger role in their offense, like Ramondre Stevenson or Najee Harris. Looking at DLF, you can get Ramondre Stevenson or Najee Harris in a second for Etienne and a third. I think both of those guys are only 1 year older than Etienne at this point. Etienne is going to be battling with Tank Bigsby, who has gotten a lot of hype this upcoming offseason. So good on you, Nate, for calling that one. We'll see what happens in the season. But, I think there's just a lot of other pieces in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, who is going to have to throw the ball around and get these guys involved. And, and the AFC is going to be tough this year. The AFC is absolutely stacked. There's going to be a lot of throwing of the football going on this upcoming year. Really like what the Jaguars have done. And I think they're going to throw the football a good amount. I know ETN is there. I know they have Tank Bigsby, but I trust Ramondre Stevenson and Najee Harris, who are just bigger pieces in their offense at this point, in my opinion. We've seen ETN last season. He had 9 weeks outside of RB2 weeks. He had 5 weeks outside of RB44. So that's a little bit concerning for me. I know he's a stud. He's a young stud. He's a guy that we all liked coming out of Clemson. He broke a lot of records there, but I think now is the time to get out of Travis Etienne and get into Ramondre Stevenson or Najee Harris in the second.
I love this. Honestly, Ramondre, Najee, these guys, they're going to get the full workload. Love this. Absolutely love the value here, Nate.
Yeah, I think, Travis Etienne is a guy that I'm ready to move off of, especially because of the value right now. I don't dislike the player, but I don't like the value right now. Currently, running back 7 on keep trade cut.
Yep.
That's some high expectations. To be fair, the running back landscape right now is a mess, and there's not really too many people that I want after like the top 3 or 4. But Travis Etienne, he hasn't had the production to really sit at that RB7 mold.
Yeah.
He's above guys like Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs. I know who are a bit older, but we've seen the production with those guys. Travis Etienne, we haven't seen it. So I think he's just a little overvalued right now. Still has plenty of potential and time ahead of him. He's still young, but RB7, a little rich for me. Be willing to move off of him.
Yeah, especially when you consider like, hey, people were being called crazy for going 0 RB a few years ago, and now the NFL is going 0 RB. So we've been telling you to build around wide receivers for a while, and hopefully you've been listening. So let's go to my last trade scenario. I went with a rebuilding trade target. I'm going to take the only tight end option on this show sheet. That's what I'm going to do. Here's the trade I came up with. So I'm trying to come up with a realistic scenario for a rebuilding team. So I did more than just come up with a trade. I'm trying to put myself in a rebuilding roster. Here's what I got going on. I'm rebuilding. I have, for some reason, Darren Waller, who his value, Superflex, 12-team, PPR, non-tight end premium is 91.1. And I'm getting Irv Smith Jr. That's right. It's happening. Shake your head all you want, boys. And 2 third-round draft picks. Now, if you're just trading these draft picks straight up for Irv Smith Jr., you might be able to do a single third or 2 fourths. Before you guys shake your head, hear me out. He's not exciting at all, and he is underwhelmed massively in his career. But
you're really selling me right now, man.
Hey, I am the master snake oil salesman, but Irv Smith signing in Cincinnati went largely unnoticed. In fact, I had no clue where he even was. And then when I found out, I was hella excited, as they like to say. His only tight end competition as a receiving tight end, is Mitchell Wilcox, who's currently on the PUP, who last year posted a meager 17 for 135 and 1. Last year, Cincinnati's top 2 tight end targets, which was Hayden Hurst and Mitchell Wilcox, posted a combined 69 catches for 553 yards and 3 touchdowns on 86 targets. So even though the Cincinnati Bengals have Tyler Boyd in the slot, they have T. Higgins, they have Jamar Chase, they still target the tight end. Irv Smith is the undisputed tight end 1 there. So to me, this is a cheap way to get a young starting tight end to your lineup that is part of a productive offense. You're rebuilding, so you need starters, and you should also always have some tight ends on your taxi squad. Regardless, he's young. He may not be sexy. He's got a hella sick neck tattoo. Get Irv Smith on your roster right now. You know what, Nate? You are really emphatically shaking your head no. So tell me, what are you thinking?
I heard Irv Smith had a good training camp. If you want to trade away a third or a fourth for Irv Smith, I don't mind that. That's fine. But Mike, this trade you came up with, this is terrible.
You're rebuilding, man.
No, if you're rebuilding and you have Darren Waller, then you're waiting until he puts up, 3 top 5 performances over the first couple of weeks, and you're trading him for a late first or maybe 2 seconds.
He's a tight end 9, man. Right now, he's a tight end 9.
He's not a sub right now. He's a hold. He's a hold, Mike. Come on. The production's coming with Darren Waller, and you got to get up before the injury, but you got to sell when the production's there. I don't like this deal, even for a rebuilding team. No, I mean, I want better draft capital. Irv Smith isn't that excited for me. But if you just want to go trade away a third or fourth for Irv, I'll let you do your thing. But I don't like this trade, Mike. I don't like this trade.
But you like the concept of Irv Smith on a rebuilding team because you're starting tight end. Okay, great. All right, Chef, you know what? Talk some sense into Nate, please.
Yeah, I'm a big neck tattoo guy, but it's a no-go for me with Irv Smith.
Point per neck tattoo league.
I want the Rewind logo neck tattoo by next week.
There we go. That'd be fire. But I think if you're going to trade Darren Waller away, I think you can get way better value at this point. Yep. I think you can even trade him for some of these rookie guys at this point because all the hype that's been going around. I mean, some can say he could be the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 this upcoming year, and I would not bat an eye. I think that offense needs somebody that is going to be consistent, somebody that they can throw to, and somebody that is just open and can make big plays. And I think Darren Waller can be that guy in that offense. The wide receiver room isn't great there. There's some guys there, but they've struggled to stay healthy at this point. So a little worrisome. I am not on the Irv Smith train. If you want to sell a third or fourth, hey, go get him. I just think it's not the move for me. If you're rebuilding and you need to find a guy, yeah, go for it.
But if you're rebuilding, do you really need to find a guy?
You don't need to find a tight end like that.
Don't need to find a tight end. Don't need to start a tight end.
Well, you have to like fill out your starting lineup.
Start one of those guys down in Miami.
No, don't do that. You might get negative points if you do that.
That's what you're trying to do, right?
Try to lose.
Even when I'm rebuilding, I'm not trying. I still want to win, man. It's hard for me to just, I try to put the best lineup out there whenever I can. It's really hard for me to just say, I don't care. I want to put in a bad lineup. It's hard. It really is. And,
you somehow still do, though.
Jeez.
Okay, you get this. Injuries and bye weeks happen, Nate.